Hey everybody, thank you for tuning in to today's message as we have been going through our series of Holy Week. Today's Wednesday, so we're going to be looking at the events that occurred on this day and what we're recognizing today. And the main question that we're going to be tackling today is, when you're in the presence of Jesus, are you pouring out or are you holding back? Now, this is going to be associated with John chapter 12, verses 1 through 8. That's going to be our focal text this evening. But basically, some context here, we're going to be looking at the actions of Mary, where she breaks the jar of perfume and anoints Jesus' feet. But also, it reveals a little bit of Judas's heart as well. And we can kind of see through this moment of Mary truly worshiping Jesus, we can see the true nature of Judas's heart right before he goes to betray Jesus. So this is going to be great because, and if you've been watching some of the other messages, you've seen that not only are we looking at the actions of what happened that day, but through these actions, there's some great lessons to be taken from this. Because Jesus, was on a mission, but through that, he didn't forget to leave a good few messages and lessons behind for us, because he, again, everything he did it for a purpose, and he did it with a teaching moment behind. So we're going to break that down in John chapter 12. So we're going to go ahead and read. I hope you join me here as we read John chapter 12. Starting in verse 12, 6 days before the Passover celebration began, Jesus arrived in Bethany, the home of Lazarus, the man whom he had raised from the dead. A dinner was prepared in Jesus' honor. Martha served, and Lazarus was among those who ate with him. Then Mary took a jar of expensive perfume made from the essence of nard, and she anointed Jesus' feet with it, wiping his feet with her hair. The house was filled with the fragrance, but Judas, the disciple who would soon betray him, said the perfume was worth a year's wages, and it should have been sold and the money given to the poor. And then this, in chapter 6 here, we're seeing John iterate here truly kind of what's going on here when Judas said that. John's saying not that Judas actually cared for the poor, because he was a thief. And since he was in charge of the disciples' money, he often stole some for himself. In verse 7, Jesus replied, "Leave her alone. She did this in preparation for my burial." And in verse 8, he says, "You will always have the poor among you, but you will not always have me." A little bit of context with this. It's right before Passover. The tension in Jerusalem is thick. If you've been following along, you have seen what has been occurring in the temple and what happened on Tuesday with the religious leaders, how they confronted Jesus. So the tension's brewing, right? They're starting to plot at this point, the religious leaders, on how they're going to arrest and kill Jesus, because they see him as a threat. The crowds are kind of getting stirred, and Jesus is getting ever close to the cross at this point. He knows it's coming. But before all the chaos that's going to erupt tomorrow on Thursday and the cross on Friday, we find this moment here. They're kind of just hanging out, if you would, at the residence here. And compared to the past 2 days and what's coming, this is kind of actually a little bit of a break for Jesus, if you would, because he's kind of, what is described here is he's kind of in a relaxed state. He's dining. He's kind of hanging back with Lazarus and the disciples here. And then kind of out of nowhere, Mary comes out with this jar. We're looking here first at verse 3 about Mary taking the jar here, the expensive perfume. She poured it on Jesus' feet and anointed it and wiped his feet with her hair. And the house was filled with the fragrance of perfume. So it wasn't just some sort of daily use perfume, some cheap little perfume, right? This was expensive perfume for the time. It was worth a year's worth of wages, according to what it says. And actually some scholars have determined what that amount is. But I put that into context for today. So in modern context, the average yearly wage here in the United States is around $60,000, right? And so this means that this bottle of perfume that would be poured, broken and poured on Jesus' feet, it was worth probably what we would say today about $60,000, okay? So what does Mary do with this expensive, super costly perfume? She doesn't just dab a few drops. She pours the whole thing out. Why? Because she doesn't spare anything. She gives it all to Jesus. How many of us can honestly say that we would do what Mary did? In our head, yeah, it sounds easy. Yeah, I would do that. But when reality hits, if we had something similar to offer Jesus in a similar moment like this, what would be our limit? What would we hold back from Him? Because if we were in this situation, I unfortunately think that most of us would have held back and dabbed only a little bit on it, on Him. And because we see it, oh, well, this is for me, this is kind of valuable, I'm just going to give a little bit to you, Jesus. Because guess what? We do that with our life right now. We say, here's a little bit, Jesus, but the rest of it is mine. I'm saving it because it's mine, right? That's what we do now with our lives. It's the same thing here. Our worship should mirror the sacrifice of Jesus. Jesus died on the cross, and He deserves all glory, praise, and honor to Him. So our worship should reflect that, right? So think about this. Question this. Are we holding back our worship, or are we pouring it all out for Jesus? That's the question that I want to challenge you with this evening, because let's look at this situation. Mary didn't do it for attention or recognition. She did not do that. That was not her intention. What she was doing it for, why? Because she simply loved Jesus. And she poured out what she had. What others saw as wasteful, what Judas saw as wasteful, what the world sees as wasteful, Jesus saw as beautiful. How incredible is that? Because she did not give Jesus just what was convenient. She gave Him what cost the most. Can we really say that in our lives today, that we're giving Jesus what costs the most? Or are we just doing what's convenient? The truth is that worship that God honors will always cost you something. Now, what do I mean by this? Because that sounds a little, hold on, wait a minute, it's going to cost me to worship? No. Listen to what I'm saying. We live in a culture of convenience. It's all about me. How easy can I get it? And the convenience, right? If we're not careful, we'll bring that into worship, right? I'm not saying some of the convenience of the world is bad. It's nice to have DoorDash. It's nice to have Netflix. It's nice to have internet, right? These are conveniences of the world, but if we're not careful, we'll bring those conveniences that make us lazy, we bring that into worship, okay? And if we give Jesus what we find comfortable instead of what's costly, we'll basically offer Him nothing, because He wants what is costly. He doesn't want what is just comfortable for us. He doesn't want our minimum. He wants our maximum. And when we hold back our worship, you're not investing anything. Like I was just saying, you're not investing anything into your relationship with God. When you hold things back, you're not making progress on your spiritual journey because you're holding back. And we should not do that. We need to be Mary, because Mary acts, her action here, it reminds us that true worship is never cheap. And true worship is going to cost you something. It may cost you your comfort. It may cost you your reputation. It may cost your control. But we do this because we owe God all the glory, honor, and praise. And also, too, my question here to you is to reflect on, what does my worship cost me? What is my worship costing me? Am I holding something back, or am I pouring it all out to God? But also, too, the truth is this evening, worship can reveal what we hide, too. We can hide things like Judas. But here, we notice in verses 4 through 6, we kind of get a little bit of insight to Judas's character here. If we didn't know the spoilers of what was going to happen, and we didn't know that Judas was going to be the one that betrayed Jesus, most of us would probably say what Judas said sounded reasonable, right? Well, that's worth a lot. We could sell it and give the money to the poor and everything. But through the Holy Spirit, John pulls back the curtain here and reveals about Judas's heart, and we're able to see that he had ulterior motives with this, right? Judas thought he had everyone fooled, but obviously he did not have Jesus fooled. And so, because worship has a way of exposing what's really in your heart. Again, in the light of worship, it reveals your darkness. And we see Mary's extravagant act here was the light that revealed everything in that room. Her love for Jesus was on full display, and Judas's greed and hypocrisy was suddenly exposed there. And some people will kneel. Some people will criticize, but Mary fully surrendered to Jesus. It forced everyone in that room to examine where they stood, okay? And that's the part, that's what made Judas uncomfortable. It wasn't the cost of the perfume that bothered him, but it was the cost of Mary's surrender. He saw in her, Mary, what he had never truly given, and that is his whole heart. This moment teaches us three things. One, not everyone who looks close to Jesus is actually following him. We see that because Judas was one of the 12. He had proximity to Jesus, but he did not have the purity. He held the money bag, but he never surrendered his heart, as we see. And he talked like a disciple, but he thought like a thief. Number two, you can use spiritual language to cover sinful motives. Judas, again, masked his greed with concern for the poor. And people still use this to this day. They use religion to cover pride, self-interest, and manipulation. My third point here, the third thing that we are taught, is when real worship happens, fake devotion gets uncomfortable. Judas couldn't stand the sight of seeing Mary do what he never could. Okay? Her obedience convicted him, and her worship exposed him. And he criticized her not because she was wrong, but because he was convicted. So here's the truth this evening. God doesn't just see your offering, He sees your motives. So here's the truth this evening. God doesn't just see your offerings. He sees past that. He sees your true motives. He knows if you're doing it for a prideful reason or selfish reason, or if you're truly doing it for Him. Remember what I said yesterday, we cannot fool Jesus. He sees right through our lies and our shield, okay? Adam and Eve, again, remember they thought they could fool Jesus, but they were wrong, okay? When you pour out what's costly, when you offer your heart sincerely, even if no one else sees it, affirms it, or even understands it, Jesus does. And He honors it. So my question is, what will you do with Jesus? We're here in the middle of Holy Week. We've gathered around the table of Bethany. We've seen what's happened, and we've witnessed this moment. And we see a moment where a woman named Mary gave everything she had. And we see a moment where Judas, a disciple, revealed what he had been hiding in his heart. A moment where Jesus received a gift the world called foolish, but heaven called it worship. Two people stood in the exact same room with Jesus. Both were in close proximity and both had access to Him, but only one truly surrendered. One poured out her treasure and the other held on to his pride. One walked out remembered forever, and the other walked out ready to betray the one who loved him the most. So my question is, as we conclude here today, will you pour out your worship unto the Lord, or will you hold back and hide in the darkness? The ball is in your court. You have to make that decision. So I ask you, what will you choose today? Let me pray for you, and then we will finish this up. Lord, I thank You for the other person watching on this side of the screen. I pray that You be with them, meet their needs, Lord. I don't know what they're going through, but You do. And I pray that their worship, that they seek to worship You purely and wholly, and that they give You everything, they pour everything out to You, and they don't hold anything back, Lord. I thank You for them, and thank You for this opportunity to relay this message, Lord. And we ask all this in Your holy and precious name. Amen. Well, thank you all for tuning in. I pray that you tune in again tomorrow as we look at what's going on at Passover and Jesus washing the feet and the communion there, and then ultimately the betrayal there when they come and arrest Jesus. So I hope you tune in tomorrow for that. It's going to be good, and we'll see you all soon. Goodbye.